Welcome. This is Kim Turcott of kimturcott.com, and I am here today with your Moon Magic energy update for the new moon in Scorpio, which is happening on Tuesday, October 25th at 6:48 a.m. Eastern Time. So, yeah, it's going to be another intense one. Just like we had some real intense energy a couple of weeks ago with the full moon, we are moving into a partial solar eclipse with this new moon. And so it's just kicking up all the energies an extra notch. Normally on the new moon, we're looking to set intentions, bring about new beginnings, but this one is a little bit different for a couple of reasons. One, it's in Scorpio, and Scorpio really calls us to look at our shadow aspects. And quite often, Scorpio gets a bad rap, but it's an intense sign, and it really looks at that birth, death, and rebirth cycle, particularly around the death and rebirth part. And it calls you to go deeper into your shadows. And with the solar eclipse happening, what happens when there's a solar eclipse is the moon is between the earth and the sun, and the moon is casting its shadow on the earth. So you're literally in the shadows with this new moon. And that is going to create an opportunity for some immense, deep healing to take place if you're willing to move through some of the challenges that you're being called to move through. It's kind of like it's really putting an emphasis on that you need to let go of something so that you can make room in order to bring something new in. And this particular new moon energy, because it's in Scorpio, it's calling you to look at those things that you have been holding on to probably for a really long time, years in some cases. It's really, we just had a celestial event with Venus, so there's a lot of Venus energies, and it is really focusing, bringing our focus to relationships. But this can really go for, it can pertain to other areas of your life as well. When I sat with the energy of this, the thing that kept coming up is, what are the stories that you've been holding on to? And when I say that, it's what are those things that have happened in your life that you just keep holding on to, and you keep telling yourself that there's going to be this specific outcome. You're kind of tied or attached to this thing that you envision in your mind because of something that happened, in some cases, years ago. And that thing is never happening, right? It hasn't happened yet, and it keeps continuing, and you keep giving more energy to the story. And again, this can be, it doesn't, I think for many of you watching, it's going to be about relationships. What are the relationships where you've been holding on because you see the potential, if you will, the potential for something better? But the relationship in its current state is not what you want it to be. It's not what you need. It's not nourishing you in a healthy way. And you keep holding on to the story of what it could be instead of looking at the reality of what it is. Now, this is a hard one. It's really hard to look at that, to look at, I mean, the word that's coming up is shame, right? Like you might have some shame around continuing that story about holding on. It's almost like you know that this isn't necessarily healthy for you, but you can't seem to let it go either. And that can bring around shame. You know, I mean, we've all had those situations in our life. So there's no need for shame. There's only need for the willingness to be honest with yourself, and then the willingness to do what you need to do to shift that story, whether that is letting go of the relationship or whether it's taking a step back and setting some new expectations, right? It doesn't mean you have to leave the relationship or leave a situation. It might mean that you have to realign your expectations or your attachment to a certain outcome. Is that outcome still healthy for you? Are the expectations that you currently have healthy for you, realistic for you? Is it what you truly, really want, or are you just attached to the energy of it because you've held on to it for so long? Really hard questions. But the energy right now is like the stage is set to do this work. So if you have these situations or relationships in your life and you're really tired of repeating the same patterns, you have an opportunity to change that during this new moon and solar eclipse. So if you are really willing to maybe shift your expectations, so this is where the work comes in, right? To really be with yourself. Because, like I said, it doesn't have to be that you let go of the relationship in its entirety, but it might mean that you set some new expectations for that relationship so that you're not constantly feeling disappointed. And that can, because when you're in a relationship or any situation, it could be not just a relationship with another person, it could be like a work situation, right? You're in a job, you're in whatever. And every day you show up and you're so focused on a specific thing happening and it doesn't happen. The energy around that it becomes heightened with disillusionment, if you will. And then that becomes this harsh focus towards, or harsh energy that emanates to either the other person in the relationship or the people around you in the situation. And then that just creates more kind of negative experiences for you. But if you can shift your expectations and be okay with that, I am not by any stretch of the imagination saying to change yourself and your own wants and needs in order to fit in to a situation or a relationship. Absolutely not that. But what I am calling for is for you to look at those expectations you have had and see if it's really what you want, or if you're just holding on to it because that's what it's always been. Can you look at it a different way? Can you have a different expectation? And if you can, then you need to be willing to show up that new way. And also to open yourself up to what that new energy that you're bringing in creates. And then let that inform where you go. Don't become so tied to that new expectation that you create a similar situation or instance down the road. It's really about learning to be in the moment and be in the flow. I feel really strongly, and I say this a lot, but it's always about the next right step. And I just had this conversation with someone yesterday. When you're committed to always just being willing to look at the next right step, instead of being so hard focused on this outcome that you have all your steps lined up. When you are in the moment and you're willing to just look at the next right step, what happens is you're able then to, the next step after that, right, is informed by the experience that you just had. So with each step you take, you're creating experiences, you're taking in new information, and that is helping you to then be in the moment to take the next right step. And more times than not, you are able to have an experience that and an outcome that is so much richer and fulfilling, because you've been present and in the moment, and you're letting your current circumstances inform the next step. And that ultimately can bring you to an entirely different outcome that was meant for you all along, that is even better than you could have imagined when you started the journey. Does this make sense? So in the energy for this new moon, what you're being called to do is really look at those situations where you have been hyper focused on what it's supposed to be, and be willing to reevaluate that, to let go of the attachment to that specific outcome, and then to be willing to be in the moment, just taking the next right, committed to just taking the next right step. I promise you that when you do this, for every step you take forward and committed to being in the moment and doing the next thing that feels completely right in your heart and soul, the universe will meet you. It will support you. Synchronicities will happen. Opportunities will come up that you could not even imagine could have come up for you. And this is how you begin to heal, and you begin to experience that life of ease and grace and joy and abundance. But it all starts with your willingness to be honest about the stories and the expectations that you're currently holding on to. Again, whether it's in a work environment, a project you're working on, or more specifically in a relationship. And it does feel like this is relationship conversation for the majority of you watching. Now, that might not resonate with all of you, but it's hard. It's hard, especially when you really care about someone. If it doesn't feel right, though, and you keep wanting it to look different, you start to try to change either yourself or that other person to make it fit. And that serves nobody. And then that spirals into, into pain and into judgment of the other person, into judgment of yourself. It can create a situation where you're unkind to yourself or to the other person. There can be a lot of frustration that comes up around that. At the end of the day, the only person that you can change is yourself. And this new moon and solar eclipse is creating the opportunity to look at those things that are probably the closest to you and the hardest things to look at. But if you're willing to look at it and you're willing to do the work to shift around the story that you're carrying around it, when you get to the other side, it will be better than you could have ever imagined. That's where the energy of the new moon comes in. You're 8, and it like that energy is amped up right now because of the eclipse. So the eclipse is really, it's empowering or ratcheting up the energy of Scorpio with that, looking at the shadow and looking at those things that we haven't wanted to look at. And it's also ratcheting up the energy of the new moon and the ability to create something new in your life. So there's lots of power happening over the course of the next, few days around this new moon and eclipse. And it is yours for the taking. Thank you so much for being with me and staying with me all the way till the end. As always, if you've gotten any little nuggets of wisdom, please go ahead and click the like button and click the subscribe button. Every time you do that, every time you click the like button, it does help the algorithms and more people get to see this who might need it. And I really appreciate you being here. I do have some journal prompts, as I always do, and those will be in the description down below, just to kind of help you sit with this energy and move through it. I really, really am grateful that you are here, and I hope that this has been helpful to you and that it supports you on your journey. Many blessings on your path. Have a wonderful week.